It's about the long-range vision for the redevelopment of the St. Paul's area, which includes Tidewater Park Elementary School and the Central Administration Building. We will hear more about the ongoing discussion about the St. Paul's area and the implications to our school vision. And of course, it has direct implications to our plans for Tidewater Park Elementary. Let me remind us that in the absence of Dr. Bentley tonight, that Mr. Spencer, our Chief Operations Officer or Associate Superintendent of Operations, is representing the administration. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Dr. Houston, board members, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to have a presentation tonight reviewing the St. Paul's, we refer to as the quadrant plan. We have our friend here, Frank Duke, who's the Director of Planning of the city, and he's going to lead off, and I'm going to let you make introductions. As Dr. Houston said, the issue for the schools is the impact not only on the attendance zoning that'll be 10, 20 years out and how that may change some of our attendance zones, but also on Tidewater Park, the school administration building, and maybe less directly Ruffner Academy Middle School. And so there are some implications for the schools. This is moving, once it's, I believe this is the last presentation before you move it to council for review, isn't it, Frank?
We have presented this to a council committee. It needs to go to the Tidewater Gardens Tenant Management Council as well as the City Council. And I think the TNC is the next presentation. Then we go to full council, and then we'll be starting a more public process, taking it out to the community as a whole.
So they've had a lot of presentation, a lot of stakeholder input, but this is the school board's opportunity to have some input into this process. One last comment, we've been represented on this project by your Senior Director of Planning, John Hazelwood. Frank?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the opportunity to come and share the vision for the St. Paul's area with you. I would like to express my personal appreciation for the opportunity to work with John for the past couple of years on this plan and the input that the school board administration has provided. It has been incredibly helpful as we look at potential implications for Tidewater Park, Ruffner, and the school administration. Introduce the people with me. Jeff Orliski on my right. Jeff is our long-range planning manager at the city. So this particular effort has been done under his general supervision, and then our project manager for this particular effort has been Paula Shea, who is a principal planner in the planning department. And Paula will walk you through what we're going to try to make a very brief presentation because I know you've got a very full agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
What we want to do tonight really quickly is just give you an overview of the draft plan, take any questions or discussion items, and then just briefly walk you through the next steps with this planning effort. Just to orient you to what is the planning area we're talking about, it's shown on the map. It's with Brambleton Boulevard on the north, St. Paul's Boulevard on the west, Tidewater Drive on the east, and City Hall Avenue on the south. It does contain Tidewater Park Elementary School and the school administration building. Just as a side note, when we began the study, we did not include the postal facility up there. The plan that as written would love to be able to expand onto that site and complete the grid and everything else through there if the opportunity presents itself. The area itself is home to the Tidewater Gardens Public Housing Community, 618 units there, 5 churches, the Hunton YMCA, Tidewater Park Elementary School, school admin, the former downtown plaza site, which is now surface parking, and scattered commercial office and warehouse uses, and it's directly across Tidewater Drive from Ruffner Middle School. Now the process we have used to come up with this vision plan, we hired a consulting firm. They conducted market and infrastructure studies for us. We got input from residents through surveys and focus groups and a series of community meetings, and most recently have had an advisory committee to go through the objectives of the plan line for line to really figure out, are we going in the right direction? And that did include a representative from Norfolk Public Schools as well as the community, businesses, and property owners. Now, as has been pointed out, really the things that affect you directly with this plan are the impact on school enrollment, both during and after redevelopment. If we take down 618 public housing units, that affects enrollment at schools. And then when we bring back housing units, that all needs to be planned out. Also, the plan does talk to the potential to replace or reconfigure Tidewater Park Elementary School depending on input from the schools, and then improving the connectivity of Ruffner Middle School. So the rest of the presentation kind of follows the outline of the written plan. So if you've had a chance to look at the plan that was provided to you, just touching on the items here. Chapter 1 is really the context for the existing conditions out there, and highlighting that it has a strategic location in the region and the assets that are there, the churches, the Y, and the school are all community assets. And then also a big part of this is both the existing and future transportation network. It could be walkable to 3 light rail stations. It could be easily accessible to the new passenger rail down at Tidewater, at Harbor Park also. Inventory of challenges is long, but whenever you talk to the community about what's going on, you always hear a lot, so it is a long list. But basically, the lack of economic diversity, the only housing in this area, the only residents are public housing residents. It's a low-income community. There is a flooding problem, lack of neighborhood serving retail in the area, things like that. The market study findings really set the context for what can go back in this area. So it really is projected to be a mixed-use, mixed-income community where there's a significant potential for retail development. 378,000 square feet of retail could be absorbed by the market in this area. It's right across from MacArthur Center Mall. Potential for office development, but also for mixed-income housing. This plan calls for a minimum of 1,900 housing units. Of that would be the 618 replacement public housing units. Working with the community and the advisory committee, we came up with this list of guiding principles, and this is really what forms the vision for the plan. And we have to adhere to all these, whether the vision we lay out is exactly how it's redeveloped or there are changes along the way. We want to adhere to these principles that we heard from the community. So, beginning with the first one is replace public housing units on a one-for-one basis. Just to reassure everybody, this redevelopment plan does call for the return of 618 public housing units to the community. Also to address economic segregation, meaning make it a mixed income community, not just a public housing community, but an actual mixed income community, and bring those non-residential uses to the community to serve them. This one is kind of different when we're doing our physical plans. We typically don't talk so much about the people, but this plan actually addresses resources for safe, healthy, rewarding living and calls for the development of a human capital plan that addresses education, workforce development, lifelong learning opportunities. Also recreation and open space opportunities, addressing stormwater, flooding. I know you are familiar with that for this area. Improving community form. We have the assets in the area that kind of sit out as islands. Is there a way to really integrate them and use them to highlight them in the community? And also address parking. Reconnect missing links. The lower picture shows this area used to have a grid street system through it, and right now it's not. It's made up of super blocks, and we really want to bring back a grid and connect this area, restore those historic connections. And one thing that I wanted to highlight on this map is taking and recreating a through street here, aligning with Freemason and bringing it through the area, and realigning Holt Street perhaps to provide that connection. And that does have an impact on Ruffner. We understand that we would have to work on land swaps and playing fields and parking, but I think it could be a real win-win situation to work that out in the long term. And then likewise, remove those barriers to pedestrian mobility. I think some of us have actually probably been these people that are shown in the picture, stranded in that median trying to get across the street. How do we make those crossings safe? So we really want to emphasize the crossings, including a signalized crossing across Tidewater Drive to Ruffner. Chapter 2 is the vision, and this is really capturing that potential physical layout of a future St. Paul's area. And it does show a series of stormwater ponds to address the flooding and a street grid and crossing, but also a series of what they're calling character districts that can have different character and their land uses. So as you can see, really the idea would be to have mixed uses up closer to St. Paul's Boulevard, meaning a mix of residential and non-residential uses. And as you move into the core of the neighborhood, really more of a residential emphasis, creating a neighborhood through there. Oh, font just changed. And then as you get over closer to Tidewater Drive, create the potential to create civic and open space emphasis. That campus setting that we could do perhaps on both sides of Tidewater Drive through here. And then chapter 3 is implementation. And there's a lot of details and steps we have to take. This lays out really the meat of the plan. What do we have to do? So I'm going to highlight a couple things that directly affect you, and we'll have your input over the next, let's say 20 years on how we do it. But beginning with, really want to reassure, part of the plan is replacement of the public housing units, and that does include tenant relocation, a plan for tenant relocation, following all the procedures that are necessary to do that, and determining the appropriate public housing mix coming back. How many need to be family units, how many are for seniors, all those things have to be worked out to meet what the market needs out there. Also, creating that mix of uses that includes the housing and the non-residential uses. And investing in resources for safe, healthy, rewarding living, that human capital plan going forward. Establishing a strong sense of place is the second overriding theme, and that addresses the recreation and open space and stormwater. But it also includes working with those assets and weaving them into the fabric of the neighborhood, which includes Tidewater Park Elementary School. And the plan is not so bold as to say outright replace the school, but it's either replace or better integrate Tidewater Park Elementary School into the community. Right now, its door is located opposite the entrance to the community, and those things. In the short term, are there things we can do, and then in the long term, to really keep in mind that we want to see this community change, and that's an opportunity. Theme 3 is connect to the city, and that's the missing links, and again, that includes the Holt Street realignment. So it's not only the intersection improvements, but it's looking at transit opportunities and bicycles, how you can move through this community. And then those barriers to pedestrian mobility, looking at sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and it does include the signalized crossing to Rucker Middle School. We've been having fun with Public Works on that concept of, as you come down the ramp, we want a signal there, and we're working on it. And then the final strategy is really this unifying theme. It speaks to the partnerships and the financing that need to be in place to be able to do this. And what I want to highlight here is the partnerships. That one of the major partners in this project is Norfolk Public Schools in making this a successful plan. So we will continue to work with you on this project. And just our schedule going forward, we're here tonight presenting to you. We will be going to the Tidewater Gardens Tenant Management Council. That actual city council date is not accurate if people were planning to come to the one next week. We just found out we're not on the agenda for next Tuesday night, so it'll probably be in December. And then we will begin more public review in January, going back out to the community to have another meeting, get their input on this before we begin plan adoption in the spring. So, I thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you. Certainly, as you mentioned in the presentation, this is an opportunity for us as well as we look at the improvement of our schools, and of course more particularly here at Tidewater Park Elementary, which is number 5 on the list for us for new construction, which gives us a little more time as opposed to the others that at the top of that list to work along with you and of course our planning department as we project what that community will look like and the needs as related to an elementary school. Obviously, given the prospective population that you presented, an elementary school will be needed there. And so certainly it would certainly be an attractive opportunity to, I think, to prospective residents that a new school would be a part of the new community. Any comments or questions?
So you said long range, and I see long range. And Tidewater Park is number 5.
Yes.
Which it was 6 schools, 5 schools in 6 years. So theoretically, that is on our table to build in 6 years. And it looks like in 6 years, things are going to be such that it would be empty potentially for a while. So that, I mean,
It would be one, we would need to coordinate that, but it does present an actual positive, a good opportunity if we could, yeah, time that
but
out.
theoretically, the timing out would be to delay.
Well, one of the challenges that we're dealing with right now is working with Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing, NRHA, on developing a phasing plan, how all of this could work. We began doing this as part of the next step in this process, which is the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative funded by the federal government. And that's why we continue to have meetings and bring Norfolk Public Schools staff into this, because we do have to figure out how is this all going to fit together.
Right.
You're correct. It may mean that we would be looking to delay this for some period of time. It's also possible that we could be far enough along with the redevelopment of Tidewater Gardens that we would have that need. So it could all work together, and that's why it's critical that we continue to try to work together. Why we wanted to come before you tonight, to keep you aware, apprised of where we are in this process.
Thank you. Yes,
And-
Dr. Horst, I'm sorry.
The Holt Street is like Ruffner. So if we were to make that throughway, that would create havoc.
Before we could do that throughway, we would have to be able to find, as Paula indicated, replacement property to replace the playfields at Ruffner, to replace the parking at Ruffner. This is a vision that we think makes a lot of sense in order to improve connections down to Harbor Park. I mean, it is very sad that when you look at this area on a pedestrian shed, looking at walking distances from light rail stations into this area, it's completely surrounded by places where it's readily walkable to a light rail station. But the St. Paul's area becomes this island that is isolated because of the roads. It's absolutely critical we find a way to make those pedestrian connections Paula was talking about. And yes, some of that may be a little painful, recognizing the issues with Ruffner, but we think it's important that we strive to get there.
I have one more if that's all right. When people bid to build, is it possible to include some sort of community center as part of what they're building so that we don't have to build it? The social capital issue, some sort of rec center or a place where kids could do computer stuff after school, or community adults could come in. Is that?
I think you've been talking to the vice mayor, because he has been saying we definitely need a facility like that in this area.
I have not, but a very wise man.
And it does come down to that issue of partnerships too. We really need to identify our community partners to do this, because we wouldn't be able to pull it off ourselves. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure I understand the concept of replace or better integrate Tidewater Park Elementary. When you talk about replacement, the possibility means what of replacement? Removing an elementary school out of that complete area, or?
No, it was actually it was a subtle attempt to not tie your hands to make it number 5 on your list if it wasn't already number 5 on your list. We didn't want to tell you, oh, by the way, you have to make this one of your priority schools. But knowing you picked it at 5, we can probably just stick to that concept of replace, rebuild. Yeah, yeah. Rather than renovate or reorient or something, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Item 3.03, review of our 2012 legislative agenda. Each year before the Virginia General Assembly convenes, the school board discusses the legislative priorities that we believe represent the best interests of our schools. These legislative priorities, after review by the board, are then communicated to our General Assembly delegation by Ms. Linda Stedman, our liaison for Richmond. Ms. Stedman is here tonight. She does a fantastic job of keeping us abreast of the issues almost moment by moment when the General Assembly is in session. And she has a presentation for us tonight concerning the priorities that are before the General Assembly this year. Mr. Spencer?
I have nothing additional to add. I mean, we've had some preliminary meetings with Ms. Stedman. She does a great job for us representing our interests in Richmond. We work in partnership with the city to make sure, you know, our directions and things we ask are consistent with the community as a whole. And so we're looking forward to another active General Assembly town. Linda?
I think it will be.
Just before Linda presents, let me just share that she will provide a kind of a briefing and overview for us tonight. We'll have a time for more meaningful discussion on these items at the legislative breakfast, and so I just don't want you to feel compelled to, you know,
Thank you, Dr. Houston, and thank you, Mr. Spencer, and board members, and administrators, and other community people who are here. I feel privileged to be serving as the district's legislative liaison again. I know you're very busy this evening, so I will strive to be brief. I submitted a draft of the priorities already to the superintendent, to the school board chair, vice chair, as well as Dr. Horsey, who serves as the board's legislative representative. So hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to at least review them in some respect. I also want to really thank Dr. Horsey for assisting me in the development of our priorities as we move forward and have discussion tonight. I also want to reassure you that once again, our legislative priorities reflect the collective thinking of many organizations such as the Virginia First Cities organization, who represents school districts like Norfolk, the older, more urban center type cities. Also the Virginia Association of School Superintendents, the Virginia School Boards Association, the Virginia Education Legislative Liaisons, who are people like myself who represent school systems, and most other school systems in the area. Now, let me see if I can figure this thing out. Is it the right arrow I push to get this thing to move?
I think you need to turn it on.
Turn it on. That would help. This red button? Ah, thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. First up, that an issue that we would definitely support is funding the standards of quality re-benchmarking at the level proposed by the Virginia Department of Education, which is $319 million. Every 2 years, to coincide with the Commonwealth's budget cycle, the Department of Education in the summer of odd number years updates or re-benchmarks the basic data for funding the standards of quality. Basically, this is just keeping up with the status quo. It doesn't fund any new programs or new initiatives or give us any extra dollars. They use things like student enrollment and the adjusting the local composite index and inflation to come up with that figure. We're going to have a little challenge on our hand this year, as usual. Already, the House Appropriations has come up with a different figure. They don't believe that that the Department of Education should have included the lottery money and some of the federal stimulus money that they used last year to be able to balance the budget and give us at least what we got. They don't believe that that figure should be in there. So they've got the figure down to $250 million. Ultimately, the decision on how much to fund rests with the General Assembly. So therein lies the challenge, and all school systems, I can assure you, around the Commonwealth are pushing for that $319 million figure. Whoops, let me go back one. Yeah, I already did that, I'm sorry. Okay, funding for essential school functions, facilities, technology, support staff, transportation, and textbooks. Unfortunately, The standards of quality, they have been funding for several years to suit the revenues and not really what it takes to adequately run a school system. And we all know that there are many things that go into running a successful school system, and to be able to meet the standards, our school facilities, technology, support staff, transportation and textbooks, all of these things are directly linked to the standards of quality. It's very hard without adequate facilities and technology to be able to meet the standards that they've set for us. So we certainly will be pushing for additional funding in those areas. The next item that we would support is phasing in the State Board of Education's unfunded 2003 Standards of Quality revisions. Back in 2003, they came up with like 5 additional standards that would equate to a quality school system. Things like assistant principals, guidance counselors, reading specialists, math specialists. In keeping with the Virginia First Cities priority, we are going to ask if you approve for 1 reading specialist for every 1,000 students as our top priority. Just last month, actually it was in September, the JLARC, Joint Legislative Review Commission, I don't remember what it all stands for, but they released a report to the General Assembly about 3rd grade reading scores across the state. And Norfolk, like the majority of other districts, fell short of the state's 95% goal for 3rd grade reading level. So I think reading specialists is a really good goal for us to go after. It's obvious with the reduced support that we're not going to get all of those unfunded revisions, but we'd like, if we ask for 1, reading specialist is what I think and many others think should be a priority. The next issue, giving districts local control to implement policies to improve effectiveness and efficiency. These are things like the mandates that the state has placed on us, taking away local control, local autonomy, like not being able to open schools until after Labor Day. Having that requirement on us, it makes it difficult for our students who take IB tests, AP tests, things that happen much later in the year, if we could open earlier. That's a bill that has been surfacing every year, and it's gained momentum. We're getting closer to having the General Assembly listen to us on that issue, and maybe it might happen this year. Issues that we would oppose. Did I miss any? Did I miss one? I'm sorry. Yes, I did, and these are important ones. Yeah, oppose adding additional mandated programs without adequate funding. There's been a number of unfunded mandates placed on us over the last several years. Last year, there was a bill by our very own well-respected Senator Northam to require a PE teacher and 30 minutes of PE every day for our students. We certainly understand the well-intention of this bill with childhood obesity and everything, but it's wrought with problems. It does not come without a fiscal impact, a time impact. We may be forced to make decisions between having art or music or PE. So without the additional funding to accompany such a mandate, I think along with other school systems, it's something that we would want to oppose. The next issue, defining instructional spending in a narrow and limited manner that does not include programs that are essential to student learning. This has come to be known as the 65% solution. There's a growing movement in Virginia and across the country to have a dedicated 65% to classroom instruction. On the surface, that sounds very reasonable, but it's how they define instruction. If we use our own state definition of instruction, John Maniscalco has assured me we spend much more than 65%. We're in compliance, but if they come up with some definition of other things that they take out, we would not be in compliance. So we're very much opposed to that. Allowing homeschooled students to participate in Virginia High School League activities. This bill has been around for the last couple of years. We understand it's coming back. We are opposed to this because we have certain eligibility requirements for the Virginia High School League. It's hard to monitor that among homeschool students. Also, there would be discipline issues, attendance issues. How do you monitor that among homeschool students? In addition, many of our own students, high school sports and some of the BHSL activities they're involved in serve as a really positive incentive for them to keep their grades up, for them to attend school regularly. And how would we explain to a Norfolk Public Schools parent that your child can't participate in varsity basketball because there's not another spot available because a homeschool student has taken that position? The next item, instituting vouchers or tuition tax credits. That's been a long-standing issue that we have opposed, because anything that diverts public money away from public schools is going to give us that much less to work with. And so we certainly are opposed to that. I think I skipped this one. I apologize, I skipped this one. Weakening the SOQ funding formula by redirecting money from the lottery to fund programs that have historically been funded through the general fund. That's been happening over the last several years. The lottery was intended to be sort of like extra money for public schools. They had it developed in such a way that 50% of it we could use for capital improvements, 50% we could use at our own discretion for programs to address SOL remediation or dropout prevention or any number of good programs. Now they've been taking the lottery and putting it into the general fund, where we have to use it for our basic programs, and so we have less discretionary money available to us. Manipulating the DRS rates to balance the state budget. The DRS system is a key component in our being able to attract and retain quality instructional staff. And the continued practice of manipulating the rates to address budgetary concerns at the state level is eroding the pension plan and resulting in a huge shortage in the retirement fund. Did that one. So, sorry. So in conclusion, we're going to have another very difficult year in Richmond. Results of the recent election are going to make it particularly challenging, and I think public education is going to face some greater challenges. Once again, we will focus on preserving what we have, maintaining local control, and asking for maximum flexibility. As far as where this leaves us now, I am hopeful that you will approve these legislative priorities and we can publish the 2012 legislative brochure like we've done in the past, something that looks like this. That's a nice handout for our delegation and actually all of the legislators in Richmond. And we will share the information in this at our legislative breakfast on December 19th at the Norfolk Technical Center. For those of you who maybe did not make it to that last year or who are new to the board, it's a very informal type meet and greet type of a meeting at the Norfolk Technical Center. Our own students in the culinary arts program prepare the meal, and sort of while we eat, we have an informal discussion of the issues and what our priorities are, and that we're looking forward to working with our delegation for the next session. So that concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you very much. To refresh my memory, I believe in this meeting, last year, we kind of approved the agenda so that the brochure could be prepared and published prior to the breakfast. Having said that, we will certainly have to provide some time for a little discussion if there are issues, items of concern on the agenda, so that we could arrive at the conclusion to give Leonard the green light to prepare the brochure as presented to us. Dr. Stewart.
Ms. Stedman, thank you for your service. I stand prepared to be in favor of this comprehensive and coherent proposal. I know that you realize that something new may arise in early December when they start talking about individually what they're thinking about. So anything that we publish, I know we may have to further respond to emerging circumstances when we see what legislative issues are coming to the surface. But I think this is very comprehensive. I think this is very coherent, and I stand prepared to vote in favor.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
we want a motion?
I would, yes.
I move that we authorize to set the brochure for presentation.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Yes. Steve?
So,
Always.
based on the governor's comments, I think we should all be incredibly worried. And I'm not sure my figures are exact, so forgive me if I'm a little bit wrong. I think that the SOQs fund 63 positions per 1,000 students, I think. Do you know?
Mr. Maniscalco could probably handle that better than I.
That number's too high.
Okay.
It's
but
more like 18 positions per 1,000.
Okay, well, then these numbers are all wrong. And I think we actually have like 78 positions per 1,000 students. Can't be 18, I don't think.
Certainly fund over.
I'll verify those numbers.
Okay, but the point, whatever those numbers are, is that right now we're 15 positions less than what we have to have. And 15 positions, if you figure $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 per position, puts us over $1 million in the hole to meet basic minimum SOQ standards. And if John's right, it's way worse than even I figured. I am not sure I believe that we should go in with preserve. I think we maybe should go in and say, we need more money to do business. And what has happened, and everyone you know better than most, is the city basically funding is flat.
Yes.
And the state funding is dramatically trending down. So I would argue that we do not benefit by going in and saying, just give us what you gave us, because that would be the absolute most that we would get. So I think that we should say it costs us a lot of money to educate kids in Norfolk, Virginia, and that we as a school system believe that maintaining the status quo is not sufficient, and ask for more money.
Which bullet point are you referencing?
I think I'm referencing, I wrote it down next to funding instructional positions to remain competitive, but that's not where, maybe funding SOQ re-benchmarking.
Yeah, and I think too, when I just summed up and said that basically we will strive to preserve what we have and to maintain local control and the flexibility issue. And I certainly appreciate what you're saying, and I think that Dr. Horsey had the same comment when we met, you know, that you asked for more, and you know, and so I certainly appreciate that, and we will do that. We will do that, but at the same time, we've got to be very we've got to be very,
Circumspect.
yeah, that's the word, thank you, circumspect in making sure that they don't move funding from one category to another, and that you think you're getting something and you're really not.
And I agree, but I don't think we should gently accept that they are giving us less money every year to do what we do. I just don't think we can continue to say that we're okay with that.
I absolutely agree, and if they're increasing the mandates, they should be willing to pay for them.
Well, I'm not even going to the new mandates. I'm going to, we need to make a point.
Okay, Dr. Stewart, before you,
Yes,
let
sir.
me ask the question, Steve, are you recommending a rewording of this?
Yes.
budget? Do you have a recommendation?
Not,
I have an idea. That's
Okay.
what,
Thank you.
I told it to Ward. Not.
wisdom rubs off on me, and I'm
You're scaring me.
verbs could be an and or. You could use the word enhance, you could use the word increase, or you could use the word restore. So would any of those preserve and restore, preserve or enhance, preserve or increase? Restore feels comfortable because it's not like you're asking for more, you're asking for return.
Steve's asking
So
for
I'm
more.
just offering you some
Yes.
possibilities.
I want more. I don't think the state can continue to cut public school education out of its budget and expect that the outcomes are going to remain as high as we as a school board and we as parents would like them to be. So I'm asking for more.
Okay, so.
I have some other things too.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation for the word? We want to get closure on this tonight.
Oh,
so
sorry.
No, so that.
You want to
when-
avoid the word preserve altogether?
Yes, I do.
Would you accept the word restore as opposed to enhance
Want
or
more,
increase?
want-
I want more, increase.
Okay.
I mean, I think we all want more, and I'm certainly in agreement with you. And people never give you what you don't ask for, that's for sure. And at least not in my life.
Right.
That enhance or increase?
Increase, but
Just increase really works for me.
Okay.
So in what item?
I apologize, it was a general sort of remark initially.
In the introductory.
You know, generally in the brochure, we do some sort of an introduction. I haven't
Right.
worked on that part yet, and maybe that's where it would be.
And I would, after you write it.
Yeah, I'll work on that, and I will.
They could just give it to us and.
I'll work on that and get it.
Do whatever we need to do.
It might make it easier for Linda to be able to move forward, since, Steve, what you were responding to was sort of an overall summary statement that we want to maintain funding, and Steve, what you were responding to was a summary statement that says we want to increase, so maybe it is in your summary statements, and that might be instead of wordsmithing each one of these support items, it might be an easier way for us to let you move forward.
Sure.
I think we need more than $319 million for SOQ benchmarking from BPL.
So the simple change would be increase the funding for SOQ
I
benchmarking.
would just do that.
Or increase
What's
the
that?
funding for SOQs.
Okay.
And
See,
not
what?
at least the level
No,
of DOE?
no, higher.
Because that's what the legislature has been given to work with.
Right.
That's in statutory, statutorily, that's how they work. The Department of Education is charged with coming up, their finance staff coming up with a figure. And then that's what the General Assembly money committees work with. And so for Norfolk
And
Public
it's-
Schools
yeah.
to come out on their own and have another figure,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be.
I think we should ask everyone in urban school systems around the state to join us. Because my other point is the LCI, that basically hurts urban schools. And accepting that the local composite index is a means through which we can use in the formula to fund, I think hurts us.
I mean, I think what I hear Linda saying is that our conversation might need to be with the Department of Education, because the Department of Education is submitting one thing to the state.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay. sorry.
Now, they can draw down on that 319. And
Yes.
there's some concern that it will be 350, so maybe there can be stronger language around maintain the funding at 319.
But is 319 enough? I mean, does
No,
319?
but the
make us-
re-benchmarking has never been enough,
Well-
because we've always, school districts have always funded more positions than what the standards of
Right.
quality have paid for.
Right.
So it's never been
Right,
enough.
so my feeling is, you're saying, and we all, obviously, I agree, we all agree, it's not enough money. The 319 isn't enough money. Why would we not ask this BDOE and thus the legislature, whatever, to give us the amount of money that we actually need to do business? I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we accept a number and feel like it's okay because that's all they have. Because they have more, I mean, there's money for other things. They need to reprioritize, and they need to put education at a little bit higher level. So I think we need to go in and we need to say the amount of money that you are anticipating giving to education doesn't actually meet our needs, and that we very respectfully request a increase in funding for SOQs to the point where it covers the expenses. And we kind of talk about it among ourselves and in other school systems, but then when it comes time to do this, we kind of all say, well, they don't have any more money. And that's a nice thing that we all say, but I think now it's hurting us.
I agree with that. I agree with you, Dr. Tomlinson, but I think that discussion you're talking about should be done with the Virginia Department of Education, right? Because they're the ones proposing the 319. And perhaps we in the future, as a board, need to pull them in and discuss with them before they make proposals to the legislature that we're not happy with the 319 or whatever they're proposing. Because see, the Virginia Department of Education is giving the legislators the guidelines to determine. So it's sort of after the fact that we're making a statement. Right? So
I understand that, I just don't think we need to accept it. I mean, I think the legislature will get a $319 million budget, or from VDOE, and they in fact will probably cut it down and to whatever that number is. And even at $319 million, we are not getting enough money for our kids to be as successful as we would like. So I think that at some point, and maybe it is, maybe, and I'm thinking as I'm talking, maybe we accept the 319, and in the opening paragraph, we say, we respect the 319, but we believe firmly that it's not sufficient money and we need an increase, and move on from there.
Okay, two comments, and then we're gonna really have to move quickly to closing for this item because of the time designated for it. Yes, okay.
Just from my perspective, looking at this presentation, I would just put the word increasing funding on each one of those first 4 points under support. That would be my suggestion, and if you don't ask, you're not going to get, so.
Yeah. Well, and all of those, we are asking for increased funding. I mean, we didn't put a dollar on it, but, and those are what other school systems and organizations are doing as well, asking for increases for teacher salaries, for teacher training, for, preserving the Virginia retirement system, for at-risk programs, for all of those, for infrastructure, for all of those things.
This is going to be a takeaway for our legislators at the breakfast. Why
Just
not put it in
sticking
there?
an increase
Increased funding,
for
the
every one
SOQ
of those
regimen,
blocks.
increased funding for essential school functions, increased funding for instructional positions. That's what I would do.
That's an easy way of doing
Are you
it.
amending your motion?
Yes.
Right, a friendly amendment.
Yes.
I'll ask.
I'll accept it as a second.
Okay, did you have another comment?
I just don't want Ms. Stedman to walk away from here unclear and be frozen in place. I'd like to clarify it right now and
I totally
let her
agree.
move out and move on.
Yeah.
I agree.
I
Okay.
have one more comment. I am not opposed to the physical education.
That horse is out of the barn. They voted on that last year.
No, it's going to come up again.
Yes, that bill was, actually, it passed last year.
Exactly.
But the governor vetoed it at
Okay.
the
Right.
request of all of the educational organizations who opposed it.
I didn't realize that.
But it's going to
No one
come,
asked.
it's going to come back.
Right.
It was sort of, just
Right.
something he could give us last
Right.
year.
I would think that we might want to support it with the caveat, as you have done, that funding be made available, that it not be provided as an unfunded mandate, but that it is, in my opinion, it's a good idea. Obesity is a huge problem in our schools, and
But that's pretty much what it says.
So is
Yeah.
the increased stress levels. I mean,
Yeah.
not just the obesity, but you put kids in school chairs for a long period of time. It's not healthy.
Right.
So-
And it's not exactly oppose additional mandated programs without adequate funding, such as PE, which is different than saying we would like PE as long as there is associated funding. It's a little bit different.
Sure.
And that's where I think we should be on it, regardless of what other people think.
Ms. Stanton?
There are, regarding that though, there are some other issues besides the funding for PE teachers. There's the time in the school day, and that's, an academic concern about fitting in 30 minutes of unencumbered physical education 5 days a week.
Right. We would be hard pressed, I think, to quantify that taking 30 minutes of instructional time to do this is going to reduce our kids' ability to do well on tests or to learn.
Yeah, and I think your audience right now is not Ms. Stanton, it's the board that you may want
Right,
to try.
yeah. I mean, that's what, this is
So let me ask-
basically for us.
Sure. So let me ask quickly, if the board is interested in taking a different position on that matter as it goes back before, and it will go back before the General Assembly?
Yes, I'm quite sure it will come back, and I can tell you, I feel confident if we do that, if you do that, we will be the only school system saying we're in favor of it.
Thank you for that
We should
information.
support in other areas.
So is there anybody else on the board other than the beloved Dr. Townsend?
I would like to address that at a later
Okay.
period, but we don't do
The
it now.
beloved part.
If we address it, I believe Dr. Northern would be more than willing and able, I've had extensive conversations about it, to come and chat with us.
Yep, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, so there is an amended motion on the floor to add increased to those areas of funding in the support segment. Having heard the motion, I'm ready to vote. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Stedman, the legislative breakfast, as you all should have your invitations, is on the 19th. That's a Monday morning at the Norfolk Technical Center, and we will be joined by our local legislators as we discuss a little bit more these items and get their hopeful support
Thank
for
you.
us in the direction that we desire to go. Thank you very much. Okay. Our next item is item 3.04. Last January and February, the school board reviewed as a proposed new policy that would govern how public-private partnership proposals could be submitted to the board, and then how the board could evaluate the proposals. We brought it back on the agenda last month. There were 2 areas that we needed to resolve. This matter is on the consent agenda for tonight. And so we certainly want to quickly get closure with this, and then we would vote in the consent agenda to approve and adopt the policy. I've asked Mr. Cloud to just update us on the 2 outstanding items that we needed to resolve before moving forward. Mr. Cloud?
The 2 blanks that were filled in was that the question had to be decided how many complete copies the proposal submits. And we made that 15. And then the other blank was the initial fee is calculated in part based on percentage of the reasonably anticipated total cost. And the percentage figure had to be decided on, and that's 3%, which is kind of in the middle of what various local governments are, school boards. Dr. Houston, you also asked me to mention at page 22, the list of factors that school boards may consider in reviewing a proposal. It was expressed as may. I changed it to mandatory at the request of board members. There's 9 different factors. I won't list them all, but it includes the cost. It includes things like the business's commitment to local contractors and residents, and their commitment to minority business enterprise participation, as well as the ultimate consideration of the committee that the board will form if they come to the ultimate point of potentially approving such a thing, which will be a committee made up of council members and school members.
The statement related to minority involvement, which page, which number?
It's the next page. It's number 7 on page 20.
The private entity's compliance with a minority business enterprise participation plan or good faith effort to comply with the goals of such plan. That was a point of concern back in the winter when we considered this. Any questions or comments regarding that?
Do you accept a motion at this time?
I would.
I'd like to so move that the amended recommendation be approved.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's discussion. Please.
Clarify your proposal, you're saying this entire document you're proposing?
It is on the
Presented to us
consent.
originally and amended or added
Yeah.
as we requested.
All right.
I think it's now at the point of making.
Well, and actually, it's on the consent agenda, and so we can discuss until we either agree or disagree on the matter, and then we'll actually vote on it.
Thank you.
On the consent agenda, yes.
All right, on page 9, under item 4, for these solicited proposals, there's the word may. School board may issue an RFP or IFP. And another one says a school board may issue a default proposal process. There's a lot of mays, the school board may would suggest to me they don't have to issue requests for proposals, which then suggests to me that there's not much you can change. We can go ahead and do what we've been doing, or put a proposal out. And I was under the impression we created these standards to make sure that it's clear that we have a process.
Right.
And with these words may in this, it indicates that at any point in time, they can choose not to go ahead and pick whoever they want to pick, whenever they want to pick them.
I think other choices of verbs, this was a will, shall,
I have no
should.
problem with it. The mays have been in there from the start,
Right.
but we can make all mays must.
Because that's what
Vote
this,
on the
that's
next
why this
agenda.
has come up, because people have felt that proposals have, contracts have been created and given to contractors, because without the public who may be interested in competing for these things, knowing that these work opportunities were out there. And with this, with these words may, that just is a loophole from what I see, right? And if I'm wrong,
Well, I believe that's the way the statute that expresses them, but there's no reason that the board can't make them mandatory as opposed to discretionary on the part of the board.
But would it be mandatory with the word may there? Is the question.
What's
Would it be automatically mandatory with this wording?
Well, no, as said, it's may. We can
That's the-
use
that's the
word
contention.
function and go through the entire document, and wherever the word may, it comes up, change it to must, unless the context differs from the concerns that Dr. Horsey had.
Jack, does this document also parallels a companion document with the city? I mean, those processes put together, right?
It doesn't parallel the cities. The cities is actually out of date. It is based on the General Assembly, in creating the statute, appointed a committee or commission to develop model policies for the PPEA, and it is based on that, with the exception of certain provisions that were taken from some other policies that other localities have used at Seymour.
So the source of my question is, in mandating certain provisions, would it put us out of whack with where the city is going to eventually be and cause this not to be a viable
Well,
option?
it renders the need for a PPEA to be null and void, right? I think what this document is saying is, this is a tool that we may use, but we don't have to. So in the event that we're presented with a proposal, that we can accept it, or we can say, no, we prefer to go out and bid this. So what I worry about is, if we don't leave may in here, then we're saying we have to accept any PPEA proposal that comes across our doorstep, and I don't think that's what was intended.
And I don't think that's what's implied in the policy. I think, I'm sorry.
And I agree with you about the PPA. What I was referring to was the RFPs. The school board must put out, when they want to have something contracted, a statement saying, we've got this business and we'd like to get proposals for it.
Right.
Okay, request for proposals. Now, that's primarily what I'm addressing, because that's why this came up for discussion in the first place. That there were contracts being awarded to people, and the people wanted to compete for them, didn't know that there was even a need for these contracts. They didn't know when to compete for them.
Right.
All right, so requiring, taking the making that sentence, where is it, on page 9,
That school board must.
saying, yeah, making so the school board must issue an RFP or IFP.
Right.
And-
proposals.
And in the earlier sentence, the school board must use a two-part proposal process? Leave
Yeah,
that as-
okay, right. But, as far as that other piece you were talking about, I agree with you,
Okay.
right? It's just that we put any business we're interested in getting, that we put out a proposal saying, hey, a declaration saying we're interested in entertaining proposals for.
Well, I think,
This is just facility, this is not, we need more paper, right? This is facilities and infrastructure. So this, if what you're saying is a little different, because this is, I guess, my impression is we're gonna build something big if we do this, as opposed to we're going to order even textbooks or reams of paper. Is that true?
Well, this instrument doesn't, this policy doesn't have to be used for every situation.
Right, and I think that's the point Linda's making. Do we need something that covers every situation? And is this the right medium, or is there another medium to do that?
But I think we're talking about two different issues now.
Right, and I'm just trying to make sure we're all clear that we're talking about the same issue.
Well, I'm talking about this one here now.
Right.
Okay?
But-
So this one here now, I am saying that we need to make it so that when we want to accept proposals or seek them, that we put out an RFP review.
Utilizing this policy.
Yes.
When we use Public-Private Education Act policy, because we can do business without using this policy.
And we have, and the criticism has been, there are people out there that want to compete for this business, and they don't know when our interests are. They don't know how to compete
Okay.
for it. And this is a tool to be able to make the competition process much more equalized.
So the idea is that when using this process, that we would not accept an unsolicited proposal and act on it without putting out an RFP to give others an opportunity to submit a bid or proposal for that particular job or contract or what have you. And I'm in agreement with that.
Question, are we getting ready to tell you it has to be must, or can we seek your guidance on shall, will, or whatever?
Oh, shall, okay, must
Uh,
be shall.
Shall, I think, would be on the same thing. I mean, at least on the page 9 changes, I don't think that affects, that ties the board's hands in any ultimate way to decide for a proposal or not. It just makes the process, it requires the board to use a two-part, whereas the statute says that they may, they don't have to. And Dr. Horsey has a good point in terms of being sure that everyone knows that the RFPs are out
Must
there.
would feel unusual to me.
Well, shall? Well,
I
if
don't
we change
necessarily
it both
see it
to
needed,
shall.
but if we're gonna put something in there, I'd rather put some usual word that most folks are accustomed to.
As long as it's a requirement, okay? You can have it there, as far as I'm concerned, it has the same meaning.
Well, if the clerk can make those two changes with the idea that you're going to vote on the policy with those changes, not the, for the consent agenda version will be.
Is there any opposition?
I have one question about the 3%.
No. I'm trying to just.
To Linda's.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay.
The 3%.
Hold on, Steve, I'm
No
sorry.
objection.
No objection, okay. Thank you. Go ahead,
So
Steve,
the
please.
3%, when I was reading through it, it would cost us some amount of money to hire consultants, I presume, I would ask you, to help us understand it. So is 3% going to cover, and I didn't have any number in mind. My question is, what is the amount of money that is likely that we're going to pay out for consultants?
The 3% is just the initial fee. It's
Okay.
and it's non-refundable. Basically, if you go past the stage of flipping through it and saying, "No, we're not interested."
Okay.
School boards never are required to expend any cost in considering, and that's why on page 13, the next page, I bolded the part that says that school boards may, and in fact, you will, if you go forward and consider it in any detail, you will have to impose other fees. I've heard, and I'm not really a construction lawyer. Berner, the city attorney, is the more experienced one in this, but I've heard that roughly it could be $75,000 to $100,000, the ultimate fee cost for a board that goes totally through all the phases to a contract.
Well, your bold thing covers it, so I apologize for missing it. And why wouldn't we just get these things on CDs instead of hard copies?
It's on board docs.
No, I mean the 15 proposals.
Because I didn't think of that. That was the model says that,
Yeah,
but I mean, we can.
And I don't have.
I don't think it needs to be changed in order to
All right.
ask for CDs and not hard copies if that's what.
And I don't, I mean, that's just the thought. And do we need to put somewhere about criminal checks? That wasn't one of the two things. but
I believe that
I missed it if it was there. There was a big long list of what people had to do.
I believe it's in there, but I'm gonna.
I'm done.
Here. I identified. This is a
What page?
qualification.
And it really may be, and I just missed it, but I was looking through, there was a big long list of things that were significant, and if I missed it, I missed it.
Jack, under qualifications and experience, item 8 says any other factors the school
What
board
page
deems
is it?
appropriate on page 20.
22.
The A8, page 20.
Yep.
Yeah, I was looking at the earlier part about the initial thing, but yes, I mean, all of the essential requirements I purposely worded in a way that the school board will look at these and included in it one that was just a catch-all for anything. I do think somewhere in the initial, and I'll check on it later, there is a reference to checking criminal background checks.
And that wasn't one of the two things I remember that we were asked to do that.
Okay, so, is there a consensus that with just the, change of must or shall for RFPs following unsolicited proposals, everybody's okay with that?
Yes, sir.
So is there consensus that we can leave this on the consent agenda with that change?
I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Because we don't have any real control of the money. I think the agreement would be between the city and the private vendor, and we would be there only to do what we do in a building, which is provide that educational, what do we really need to educate kids?
Do you find it necessary that we pull this off the consent agenda?
I
Vote on it
would
separately?
probably vote against it.
The entire consent agenda?
No, well, this, I just don't see as something.
But it's on the consent agenda.
So what are my options?
Your options?
No, it can be removed.
It can be removed if you feel that strongly about that statement.
Unless you want to vote against the entire consent
No, I don't
agenda.
want to vote again, I'm good. I can.
Okay, because we would also have to remove the beloved from your title.
My colleague thinks that if we just have one extra vote, it won't actually hurt things, so if you would remove it, we'll vote on it separately. I love
I'm
Dr.
confused.
McLean.
This has been talked about for 6 months or 9 months.
Thank you, Dr.
Now
Warren.
we're getting ready to remove it totally, and I'm just confused.
No,
No, it'll be voted on
We're
individually.
voting on it, so I can vote against it.
The idea is it's not fair to make a board member
No, I like that.
vote against everything
Yeah.
in order to vote against this
Yeah.
particular.
usually does.
I've been pretty consistent. For those 9 months, I've been fairly consistent.
I wasn't here, but I like it.
Look up contrary in the dictionary.
I like all the other consents.
Okay.
Now I understand.
And support.
Motion to remove it from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to remove that, this item from this,
So moved.
consent?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Probably moving seconded that the, PPEA policy be removed from the consent agenda.
And vote separately.
Separate item vote. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you, Steve. Okay, 3.05. The school board has a policy that has been in place since 1997, authorizing our Norfolk Public School security officers to use handcuffs and OC spray, sometimes referred to as pepper spray, when the officers have reasonable cause to believe that such measures are necessary for the safety of the students that they are used upon, the officer or other students or adults. Recently, there has been public discussion about this policy because of incidents, and tonight the administration has prepared a report for the use of these items in our schools. Let me clearly state what are the objectives for the discussion. One is to simply be informed and abreast of the policy and the use of OC spray, and the other is to perhaps determine whether or not we want to maintain this policy, or change the policy, or get rid of it altogether. But that's the end toward which this conversation moves. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Dr. Houston, members of the board. I'm joined tonight at the table as part of this report, Senior Director of Pupil Personnel, Dr. Lands, and Senior Coordinator of Security, Renee Parker, and I appreciate you being here. Meeting our responsibility, I know the board agrees, meeting our responsibility to maintain safe and secure schools is primary for both students and staff. And to do that, you put a number of things in place, and it's responsibility of everybody that populates those schools. The children in the schools, the staff in the schools, the parents that support those schools to make sure that they are maintained in a safe, secure fashion. But you put other provisions in place to also maintain. For example, you put designated staff in place, such as security officers, and you currently have 51 that are within the budget. We have school resource officers, which are uniformed police in your secondary schools. We have deans of students in middle school, so you have some designated staff that are there primarily to make sure the climate is what you want it to be. You put practices in place, practices such as the leveling system, random searches, school safety audits, fire drills. All of those are practices that are put in place to help us maintain those. And you put in tools. We talked a little bit earlier about CCTVs, for example, is a method of maintaining security. Metal detectors would be a tool. And tonight, we're prepared to review for the board policy GEZZ, which simply provides some additional tools for your school safety officers to use OC spray and handcuffs when appropriate. I would also suggest to you, and I'm going back now to my experience as a building principal, you really have a continuum. When you look at school safety, you have a continuum, starting with the beginning of the continuum is setting standards. We do that through the student code of conduct. Expectations that we have for everybody in a school setting. And the continuum continues out. You have intervention kinds of programs like Dr. Tunnelson mentioned earlier, PBIS. Other intervention programs would be kind of the next step. We have a discipline plan in place, which is kind of the next step. Unfortunately, we get into situations occasionally where it takes direct force to be able to maintain the order. Those occasions are not often, but when they are, we're asking staff to intervene very physically and directly to maintain the order, safety, and security of the school. And so really, to me, what's at question tonight is how is the best and most effective way to maintain that order, and what kind of force is most humane to use. We have, as I mentioned, 51 security officers, all of which have been certified by the state to be in that position. That requires that they have 32 hours of training initially to be hired, and then 16 hours of annual training and get recertified every other year. So these are trained, skilled officers that work with, along that continuum, everything from establishing relationships and good communications with students and others to be able to maintain safety, all the way through being able to deal with physically situations that get in front of them. You have, as part of your board docs, a report, a comprehensive report that was put together by pupil personnel. As Dr. Houston said, this is a policy that was put in place in 1997. It's been reviewed twice, which I think shows real wisdom on the part of the board, because it's not a policy we want to leave out there without ever going back and revisiting, making sure we're in the right place. But it's been reviewed legally once in 2002, again in 2004. I believe in 2004 it was actually recodified as part of some work the General Assembly did. So we continue to look at this. We look at this practice of using OC spray. On those occasions when we use it, we have a post-event protocol that we go through, and we'll hear a little bit about that. And so I'd like at this point, Dr. Lands, if you would spend a little time just reviewing, because time is always an issue, but what's in that report for the board to look at, and then we'll answer any questions, Dr. Houston.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Good evening. As part of the information that you received, I will point out briefly for your discussion. In the report, first you'll see the snapshot of disciplinary incidents, and we thought it was important to share some information with you specifically about discipline incidents across the school district, just so that you would have a point of reference for this discussion. We included just 2010-11 data for you and gave you an overall look at discipline and law violations, while also following up with some of the system totals related to the major categories. So you'll know, for example, you'll see in one of the tables you received quarterly information for last school year related to fighting and law violations. Also wanted to provide for you some of our information related to recent discussions about assaults against staff and threats against staff, so you'll also see those tables noted. I will point out that the information that you noticed in the first tables, that was related to specific student referrals, but then the last table that you received in your report related specifically to distinct students referred, so actual discipline incidents by specific students in the district. We followed on with providing, again, the policy for you for your foundation for the discussion of our use of handcuffs and OC spray within the school district. And wanted to give to you some information related to best practices and recommendations from governing bodies. So we noted in there the OC spray used by staff members being an acceptable policy as long as we follow, as Mr. Spencer mentioned, our actual school board policy related to trained officers, and to make sure that we receive the appropriate training, or staff members receive that training throughout the school year. It's followed by a brief section where we noted some deterrence and information specific to our training. So you'll see where we listed some information where we utilize the student code of conduct. For example, we have a level system in place that you're very familiar with. We have a random inspection program, a number of intervention and training techniques that are utilized, as well as an overall list of our annual training that's provided, from our 4-day security training that's provided for the officers at the start of the school year, as well as regular trainings with our lead security officers and other district wide trainings, such as the all-staff training and winter sessions that we have for the officers. In follow-up to that, we also looked at other practices by school divisions, because, as you know, there's been shared information about how we're the only school district in the area that actually utilizes the OC spray and handcuffs, and provided some specific details from other school districts about that. So you'll notice, for example, one school division noted that they rely strictly on their school resource officers. In another case, you notice that a school division shared with us that they would like to actually utilize some of these measures, but have not been given the authority to do that. And so we wanted to highlight some of those areas for you in the report. Finally, within that report, we shared with you some of our next steps in terms of looking at specifically the number of security officers that we have in Norfolk Public Schools, and our efforts as a district to provide information for the upcoming budget for next school year to put in a request for additional security officers to support or more closely align the number of security officers with the needs in the building. So the last item you noticed in the report was a total number of schools by district, and then the chart below that you'll see where we listed information related to security officers and school resource officers in just 3 of our local school divisions. Also, in the information that you received from administration, there was a letter from one of our security officers sharing some very specific detail about his experiences as a security officer in Norfolk, as well as in other districts and within a number of schools in the school district. And so just wanted to highlight some of those items for you and provide some detail for your discussion as you review the policy and what our next steps might be as a district. Also, as Mr. Spencer mentioned, Ms. Renee Parker, our Senior Coordinator of Security, is with us, and we're all here to answer any questions that you might have to support your discussion.
Okay. Let me ask, you mentioned in a city council meeting some figures around a number of times this spray has been used, I think in recent years. Is that information available?
Yes, sir, it is. As far as the handcuffs and OC spray, we looked at it from, provided information for 2008, 9 school years, 9, 10, and 10, 11. And so, for example, in 2008 and 9, there were 7 incidents with the use of handcuffs versus 13 with the OC spray. In 2009, 10, 19, and 17, respectively. And then in school year 10, 11, we had, let's see, I think there were, I have listed 7, total of 75, 7 and 5 for the 10, 11 school year. Yes, sir.
School year.
Yes, sir.
7 use
And
of
5.
the handcuffs?
Yes, and 5 for the,
And 5 for the pepper spray?
yes, sir.
Okay. I think, and I'm just kind of sharing this to stimulate the conversations, to stir the pot. Certainly, safety is the big issue here, but I also think along with the safety issue, while I haven't heard this word used, certainly I think the sentiment is implied that there is some concern about the ethical nature of using OC spray on kids in schools. That's the sentiment I get as I listen to concerned parents and stakeholders about this practice. I guess I would ask us to think about both this issue from both of those vantage points, considering the number of times that it has had to be used over the last 3 years, as well as what do we think about the practice as it relates to ethics in this matter with our children.
It has a direct link to ethics, and that's what I was making reference to when I brought it up. You know, parents would ask, you know, what's the difference between our kids in Norfolk in relationship to other kids in the area where they claim that no pepper spray is being used. But this area of our security guards, that area has been drastically reduced. Am I right? Over the last couple of years? Yes, that makes me think that we should really start looking back at how we can appropriately increase and staff this area.
I think there's something to that, but at the same token, I have a question. Have we looked at the increase in violent behaviors over the years in our schools? Because I wonder if there's a relationship between the increase in violence and the increased use of pepper spray. Because if yesteryear we had 1 or 2 simple fights, and now the fights are getting much more combative and much more vicious, then I would understand why suddenly people are concerned about pepper spray usage. So I wonder if we've sat down and looked at the quantity and quality of the confrontations that we're having in school, because based on the things I've seen, we've got some very vicious interactions going on in schools. We also have staff that are being brutalized in their attempt to be not to use pepper spray to stop fights. So although there may be some ethical issues, my question would be, what other alternative is there? And if there's another alternative, then let's talk about that. But I wonder, and I'm not a security guard or a police person, so I don't know. But I think we need to talk. I mean, it's one thing to talk, but don't do. But let's talk about what else, what other options there are.
And I think that's what I was talking about, one of the options is to go back to readdress the decrease we made. You know, we really hit that area very hard. And we need to go back and kind of readdress it.
I kind of agree with you, Linda.
Which Linda?
This Linda, I'm really sorry. And I might agree with you too. I'm not sure where the ethics thing ends up. But I think everyone in this room hates the idea that we have people in our schools with handcuffs and spray, OC spray. And I mean, we all hate it. But I am not sure what the options are. I mean, is the option one person getting a chokehold on one person and a chokehold on another? And these people are as bigger than some of our security guards. So in terms of safety, we're talking about all the kids in the school. And ethically, I think we need to talk about all the kids in the school. And so I would ask us, as the experts, what other options are there? How do you break up a fight as one person or even two people of 6 or 8 people without some out, I mean, how do you break up a fight like that? What are your options as a person in a school, as a teacher, as a principal, as one of these officers?
The likelihood of someone getting hurt increases without the pepper spray. Because now you're using body force against body force, size against size, and it's going to be the stronger man at that time that's going to either win or lose, unfortunately. So with the pepper spray, that is a limited amount of incapacitation versus breaking a rib, breaking an arm, breaking a leg, as you saw earlier, falling and cracking a head. I mean, you have to weigh it, and without having enough people to give that bodily force, the risk is unlimited.
Glenn, you want?
It truly is unfortunate that we used to have to use pepper spray or OC spray. In my career teaching 30 years ago at Flint Northwestern High School, security guards carried pepper spray and handcuffs. Unfortunately, there's situations that call for it. What I would like to do is make sure that we ensure that our security people and our staffs are trained in how to diffuse these situations. So we limit the times that we have to use it. And I'm not saying we overuse it, I just want to make sure that our staff has the ongoing training to try to diffuse these situations so we can prevent the altercations in the first place.
Yes, one.
Could you review the number of cases so far this year and then give me the historical background going back to 2007? Because how many incidences of pepper spray have we had so far in the school year?
5.
And then go back to 2007, not handcuffs, just give me the pepper spray. 7 and 2, and then move it up.
I'm sorry, you said 2000 what?
How far over back do you just went?
I went through 8, 9, there were
Yeah.
13 for the OC spray, and 9, 10, 17, and then 5.
Last year?
Yes, sir.
I'm confused because it's not June and we don't know what the whole school year holds and we don't know what the context is. What has changed ethically from 1997 to today, I'm also confused by. Wanting there to be pepper spray used in schools on people? No. But I'm not sure what the difference is. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to defer any final decision or decision-making process until we're closer to the school year and we have a context of comparing years to years. That's just a possibility. I'm not proposing it, I just see it as a possibility.
Okay.
But I would support that, but I also would like for us to add to those numbers, the numbers of confrontations that security has had to stop over that, whatever research period you're talking about, so that we can see in comparison of how many times they had to versus how many times there were, fights and things going on. So that we can see if there's been a proportionate increase in use or decrease. Because one year to have 20 confrontations and have 15 pepper spray usage may be warranted versus a year where you had only 5 confrontations and 5 pepper spray uses. Right? So I think it's going to be important to look at the number of confrontations or fights.
That's a subjective. That's a very subjective number that you're looking for, because how can you?
The ones that get reported is what you have.
Plus there are a lot of variables that would be included in that. You had gangs, you had a lot of different factors.
And I think it's 2 different questions that we're asking. If the number of incidents is going up and the number of pepper sprays are going up, if the number of incidents is going down and there are more pepper sprays that's one question. That question would be answered, I think, by we would train people better. I think the real question that I'm trying to think about, and I think what we need to do with the policy, is, do we think pepper, OC spray, pepper spray is okay as one measure in the school's sort of arsenal, probably a bad choice of words.
Toolkit might be a
Right, toolkit is a better, when it came out, I knew it was a bad word. But in the school's toolkit in terms of maintaining safe and secure schools. And I think, you know, if that's what we agree on, then we can look at the numbers, and if they're going up disproportionately, that would suggest to me we need to do a way better job of training if the use of spray versus it ratios. But I think one of the questions we're trying to answer now is, as a board, is this policy, is it okay in our toolkit to have pepper spray as really a last resort option? So, using your words, that physical he or she who is bigger wins sort of is taken out of the equation.
No,
Are there any schools that we don't have pepper spray usage? Because one of the things I was wondering about is if there is a situation or an environment where there is no pepper spray being used. Well, I'm not even touching that one, but why, what is it, how effective, and what kind of damage has occurred to the individuals when fights are attempted to be stopped, okay? Because again, to me, the question is pepper spray the least damaging alternative versus, you know, man-to-man separation or whatever? Because it's not just the students, we're talking about, not just the students in the fight, we're talking about the bystanders, and we're talking about the faculty, and we're talking about the security people, right? So there are, you know, there are a lot of people impacted by this, and is pepper spray the least damaging? Okay. And then another question, may just be education for me, is when did we start, or why did we start using it?
1997.
But why did we start using it? What was the rationale? Because it suggests to me, back then, it was shown, I would assume, that that was a better alternative than having a bunch of football player built guys separating kids fighting and then getting, you know, rumbling on the floor. So do we have any documentation that says this was a better, effective way of doing it from yesteryear?
I doubt very seriously we have that before us, you know, or at the table tonight. My thinking, and I certainly understand that, you know, a possible proposal that Warren has made about delaying a decision as we look at this the rest of the year, deferring. I would like to just share quickly my opinion on the matter. I understand the safety issues and do not make light of it at all. That is, the safety issues surrounding it. I would like us to find other measures, if at all possible, than the use of pepper spray. And my preference would be SRO officers. Having it for me is one thing, security officers is another. And again, I understand the argument for it and totally respect it. But my preference as we continue this discussion, if we defer a decision tonight, and I'm okay with that, is that we would look at if we need to add more security, and I know we do, to our schools, then for me that would be a better solution than the continued use of this among security guards. You know, we talk about those who've had to use it. I've talked to those who said in all the years they've been security guards, they've never had to use it, and have been involved in, you know, breaking up, you know, a lot of fights. And so, and again, I want to be very clear that I'm not making light of what it takes to separate two combatants in a very violent, you know, fight. I'm not at all, but my preference would be to try to find other ways, if at all possible. So,
a couple of things for me, and I do feel like I need more information, Warren, and Crook, I think I'm sort of philosophically aligned with you. I look at pepper spray as the end result of a number of things that happen leading up to a pepper spray. And I wonder if we have enough information about what are our methods of intervention and diffusing. That's one category. The second one is training, and then the third one is just head count. And I wonder if we looked at moving the levers that we have around intervention and diffusing the situation, training, which may be perfectly fine what we have in place. Maybe there's additional training, and then head count, and that goes to the security officers. If there might not be a better solution for the end result than the pepper spray. And this is an excellent presentation, and thank you, Dr. Lanz. At this point in time, I just don't feel like I have enough information to allow me to say I'm happy with the end result being pepper spray being available.
This is an issue that I think we certainly have to at least decide a next step on. I would not be comfortable with tabling it unconditionally. That there should be some conditions surrounding it. Next steps, what kind of information do we want? When do we anticipate revisiting it? And either deciding as a board to keep the policy as is, or change or eliminate the policy altogether. Recommendation for a next step.
If we decide to table it with, we need information on X, Y, and Z, I believe we should keep the policy in place until we have enough information to actually make a change. Assuming that the policy was in place for a reason, and a lack of information would suggest we don't know enough to change what we're doing yet.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Chairperson.
It's okay.
I just find it very alarming because I know we have limited security guards in these schools. And they are definitely outnumbered. And when something breaks out, I was a teacher and I can remember so vividly on the hall. When something breaks out on the hall and all the kids start running towards a fight, now you have to think, if I don't bring this to a halt, there's going to be more kids injured, plus staff. And I cannot imagine that any of our security guards have ever taken the step to misuse this OC spray. I just can't even imagine. And I just fear if we're going to relook at this, I agree with my partner here, it must stay in place until we can come up, if we're trying to come up with something else.
Well, I don't think we need a motion for that unless we were going to change it. We would need one. If we're not going to change it, I don't think we need one. But I would like a next step. That's my concern right now. What more information do we want? Are we looking at another period of observation in addition to some additional information to inform our decision? What exactly are we saying? Yes.
I would like for us, I don't know if your department, somebody's department here, to look at what grade level these pepper spray incidents have occurred, the number of students per year that we've had in the system, so we can look proportionally at the number of students who may be exposed to this kind of situation. I don't know if you have recorded number of fights that have had to be broken up versus the number of pepper spray instances.
I mean, all of that's in our the number.
Right.
Yeah, we have all
the
the
law violations are said. We have that documentation.
Do we have head count of security officers for each of the years that we were talking about, 08, 9, 9, 10?
Staffing?
Yeah. That would be useful. I mean, we got a spike in 9, 10 that I don't know when we started cutting back, and
Is that
Yeah,
a
but
reflection?
you're talking about an additional 4 incidents.
Yes.
I mean, when you
Right.
look at the number of times this spray was used,
Yeah.
in comparison to the number of fights,
Right.
there's, I mean, it's really minimal. And we certainly can't discuss this, but, not so much longer, we have to get.
I have one
Yes.
request, if we defer this to January or whatever, giving our colleagues time beyond the holidays to prepare information. And that is, since we have this, our membership in the School Boards Association,
Sure.
there is an option that they can assist us in brokering information. They can put out a electronic voluntary call
Sure.
for folks to please tell us so that we can tell Norfolk School Board if you have such a policy for pepper spray in your school system, and if anyone is either migrated to or from such a thing. I think that exists, and I think we have a Norfolk colleague in the Norfolk School Board, in the Virginia School Boards Association. I participated in responding voluntarily. It's not a requirement, but I'd like to turn to other school systems, and I first want to know, do you have it? And second, have you migrated to it or from it? That's not an official data request, but that's what I would like to know.
Okay.
And should we get that data, I would like for us to get a profile of the schools that have changed it, because, a rural school changing it has a different impact than an urban school. So I think we need to get a profile.
But it becomes a voluntary thing, but I think people will respond. I always respond to it.
Okay.
Just a request for information, if you want a next step, what are our training, what's involved with our training?
That's a part of the presentation.
Is it explained in detail? Just the 4-day
Be
training?
right there listed, but not the specifics of each of the
And then
days.
what do
But
we
we can
do for
provide
diffusing
some of the
situations?
Okay,
specific
so
topics.
let me request, Janelle, that we would place this back on the agenda for January, because I don't want to kick the can down the road here.
No.
Put it back on the agenda for January, and that we will talk about specific, even if information that we want to better inform the decision in January.
For clarity, the fights that are indicated on here,
Yes.
are they the fights that have resulted in out-of-school suspensions? Is there anything in here at all about kids getting in fights and having in-school suspensions?
Now, in order to look at specifically like where you see on the fighting for last year, like the 715 incidents, it depends on the circumstances, and the level system in the code of conduct would provide the specific information about the number of days of suspension, but it's difficult to tell just from looking at that, even down to, as we collect information specifically about the incidents related to OC spray usage, we would have to go back and look at the specific cases and incidents related to the students involved in those cases to be able to share that, but it's not, you wouldn't be able to tell that from that number.
I guess what I'm asking, is this 715 all the fights that students have had in a year, or is this 715 the fights that have resulted in levels where they have in-school, out-of-school suspensions?
That's the total number of fights for the district related to that specific infraction category.
And that that's what I get at.
Mhm.
So the infraction code
Yes, sir.
is put into place when the fight goes to the office.
When it's coded as that, yes.
So would a fight be coded, or would an altercation be coded as a fight if someone was given an in-school versus an out-of-school suspension, or a 2-day versus a 10-day or 90-day?
You mean as far as like if you can get up to 5 days, for example, for a
Without it
particular-
being a fight?
Yes, right.
Does no one know what I'm talking about? I think I'm being really clear. I will stop, I'm sorry. I will ask.
I mean,
I don't know, I'm sorry, I put a fight about a big out here.
I mean, there.
I got you.
I know.
Good, I'm good. I will ask it later, or get clarity later.
Did you have a response?
As far, to make sure, I mean, I want to make sure that I understand you in terms of the coding. When you said like 1 to 2 day, for example, versus if it's someone who's suspended for 4 days for the fight.
Right. Does,
Let
me do it later.
If the fight was written up, if it was written up as a fight, it doesn't matter what the disciplinary action was, it's still going to be recorded.
Right, but does every altercation between students get written up as a fight, or is there a lower level that
No.
it can be coded?
No,
Okay,
because, and then
that
if there's
was
like
really my question.
a mob assault, or there are other
Is it lower
subcategories
assault?
as well,
I
or
mean,
so-
they're
right, there
plus.
are a number of other categories that could have resulted
No, it's
in
different.
students, right.
So
Uh-oh.
if there's an assault, that's not, and I will worry about it much later.
They're listed, Dr. Thompson,
see
for
them
example,
differently.
within
I
like
see
law
them.
violations, there are a whole bunch of subcategories that are under that even. So there might be some specific cases where, like the assaults, for example, that would be within that 741 number. There are many subcategories of the rule violations, law violations,
Okay.
all of those.
It actually
Okay.
won't even matter.
Okay.
I mean, really.
We are over time. There was a request under new business. Are there any legal matters for this session?
No, that was just a placeholder.
Okay. There was a recommendation a request from Dr. Stewart for a new business item and.
I promise to be
four, 5
brief.
minutes. Okay, thank you.
This may be a request for new items. The topic is strategic facilities placement analysis. I had the honor of being part of a Domain 7 infrastructure meeting that resulted in me seeing wonderful capabilities because of the knowledge base of colleagues here, Spencer, and great possibilities to follow up on the MGD study and the other things that we're doing. The term strategic facilities placement analysis to enhance teaching/learning with technology. If I would be allowed to meet with Mr. Hazlett and his colleagues that he deem appropriate at a time convenient to him, it could be that data already exists for what I would like to begin this analysis. In follow-up, I would respectively request at a future workshop some time to share initial information. But initially, I'd like the opportunity to meet with Mr. Hazlett, if Mr. Spencer and Mr. Hazlett could grant me that. It could be that existing data already is there. It could be that I may need to request further, but I definitely would like a time in a future workshop for strategic facilities placement analysis to enhance teaching with technology.
Okay. You have something to say about that?
No.
Any questions?
Great idea.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I do have one other. I would like
Columbo.
I would like us to think about.
Permission granted, Dr. Stewart. Steve.
My one thing is I would like us to reconsider our summer schedule. I would like for, I'm perfectly fine with people working 4-day weeks. I am uncomfortable with the fact that we actually close the school system on a Friday. So I would like us to consider figuring out a staffing pattern so that, well, you could even do it half and half, whatever. To figure out a staffing pattern that would allow us to give people 4 days, if that's what people want, 10-hour days, but would not close the schools on a Friday.
Okay, Janelle, would you put that in the parking lot for?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.